Hi, my name is Sendin and welcome to my presentation. The research I'm undertaking for this project is to determine the attitudes, behaviours and perceptions of fast fashion in young people. This is for the research question, what factors influence young people aged 18 to 24's purchase decisions surrounding fast fashion? And I've done this for the accreditation body Ethical Clothing Australia, and they determine whether brands are being ethical and sustainable and whether they are within their legal obligations. And I did this because I think there's an opportunity for Ethical Clothing Australia to investigate whether there are factors that perpetuate the purchase of fast fashion and whether these attitudes and behaviours that that young people have influence whether they buy and whether there's a means to mobilise the factors within the attitudes and behaviours that young people have. So I've determined some SMART goals and research objectives to complement this research question. My research objectives are primarily to understand the reasons behind the attitudes and to identify whether their perception has an impact on their purchase decisions. Now, my SMART goals are more specific and they're about gaining an insight into the information that my target audience read about fast fashion and also to get their opinion on whether they would consider alternative means of fashion consumption. So I considered my target audience because I was presented with a relatively small cohort of individuals, so mostly females in their second year of uni. And so there wasn't much opportunity to expand from that. I also identified that most young people see fast fashion as wasteful, and this is because of online influences such as articles that are shared. So I constructed my survey questions based on this. And but on the other side of this, I also wanted to see whether social media had an impact on the social decisions by bolstering it, whether like influencers or advertisements could increase purchase decisions by young people. I also wanted to see whether young people had brand loyalty towards these fast fashion brands, as it's been recorded before that young people don't really have brand loyalty but towards fast fashion brands, and rather they look at the trendiness and the price. I think that both qualitative and quantitative research are beneficial, and I looked at this when I was doing my research, and I think that qualitative research is more beneficial for having more in-depth, personal opinions on certain behaviours regarding fast fashion and also perceptions, and it is a good indication on more individualistic ideologies. Quantitative research is also good, but this is more to get a broad set of data that gives me outlining information, whether for general opinions. I also considered organisational listening in my research, and this is for organisations to have two-way communication. I think this is really important, because it makes sure that audience opinion is valuable and makes sure that that's what influences what research I'm undertaking. I also had to make sure that my research questions were engaging, so I did that by multiple structures of questions in order to determine whether different information that could be presented by my target demographic, and also to keep them on their toes and to keep them interested. I went through some immense ethical considerations put in place to ensure that I had consent, considered consent for my audience, so I gave out consent sheets. I also made sure that they were allowed to leave at any time if they felt uncomfortable or otherwise. I also made sure that there were no questions that could potentially cause reputational harm or maybe physical harm if that was a risk. I also made sure that their privacy was obviously upheld. So I think that the biggest observation I found with my survey was that their attitudes contradicted their behaviours. While the majority thought that fast fashion was wasteful, 64% said that they bought it monthly or semi-regularly. Majority also thought that sustainability should be the responsibility of the organisation rather than the consumer. I also found out that they would consider alternative means of consumption, but only 25% have actually done it. And within my interviews, there was a consistent theme of fast fashion being seen as cheap and also easily accessible. This was cast in a good light and a bad light. It was cast in a good light because it was considered easy to buy, they could get a lot of clothes and be proud of their wardrobe. However, it was also cheap, and the quality is perceived as not that good, and it perceived as they underpay their workers, as for example. They also said that advertising and influencers did have an effect on whether they purchased fast fashion goods. They outlined that they liked these fast fashion brands more for the style and also for the price rather than the values of the actual brands. Therefore, there wasn't as much brand loyalty when they did make purchase decisions. I think that in future I could have had a bigger sample size. I would have preferred more males, because I think that males are really underrepresented despite also taking part in the practice of purchasing fast fashion. I also think that I could have benefited by adapting my research for coronavirus, as I think that this really has an effect on people's purchasing decisions. I think that I did really well in garnering new insights through quantitative and qualitative research in regards to the perceptions, attitudes and behaviours that young people have in regards to fast fashion consumption. Although in future some things can be corrected, I think that I learnt a lot from this exercise. Yeah. Thank you for listening to my presentation.